Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to Selflessly Selfish episode number 5. Sorry about being so late with the episodes. Been dealing with a few things and finally had to get my mind right to kind of focus. And I felt like it wasn't fair to put out a half-assed video if my mind was somewhere else. So I want to apologize for that. But I'm back with episode 5. And in this brief episode, I want to talk about what I've been seeing that's been a trend on social media a lot. And I know when it comes to social media, we really got to take it with a grain of salt, and we got to understand that usually on social media, the representative that we put out may not be indicative of who we are as a person. It's usually who you want people to see you as a person. So people coming across as genuinely as possible with their flaws and transparency and honesty is probably far and few in between, but that's usually up to the person that's consuming the information. But for this particular video, I want to talk about the growing trend of what seems to me to be men versus women for some weird reason that's taking place in the social space right now. And as I watch this trend of men versus women, it makes me grateful that I'm not single and out in the dating world, because it just sounds like a lot of unaccountable, tit for tat, scorekeeping, unrealistic chaos. So I guess the question that I want to ask you guys today is just based on those videos that I've kind of been seeing and based on the comments that I've seen about, you know, women's views on men and men's views on women. Are you guys that are single out there, or even the ones that aren't single anymore, just as your journey to get to where you're at now in a committed relationship, were you or are you embodying the things that you are asking for from others in regards to being in a relationship? A lot of times we keep score, and a lot of times we have a list of what it is that we want our significant other to be, either when we meet them or at some point in time in our relationships. And I guess the question on the flip side of that is, are you already bringing those characteristics or those aspects or those personality traits to the table to even ask for the things that or demand the things that you're demanding from a potential suitor or a significant other? In my own journey in relationships, I can tell you right now, I did not embody a lot of the things that I was asking for or demanded in a woman that I wanted to be in my life. Honestly, I didn't take a lot of inventory of who I was as a person and what I was bringing to the table, so to speak, which seems to be the trendy thing to say nowadays. But I lacked in a lot of areas that I claimed I desired from a woman. So I guess this conversation goes back to the overarching theme of accountability and really taking inventory of who you are and where you're at, and how that relates in your dating outcomes, your marriage outcomes, or your relationship outcomes. I think oftentimes we ask for things that we're not willing to be, or we assume that we are those things. The best way to take inventory of who we are, if we're unable to see it for ourselves, is to ask the person that we are with. For example, if I feel that I express love in a way that comes across in a way that my wife benefits from or desires, I think it would do me well to ask her if she's happy, if I'm providing the things that she needs from me, where am I falling short at? And going into that conversation open-minded enough to understand that I might not hear or get the answer that I was hoping for, but know that I'm using it as a jumping off platform for realistic communication so I can change behavior. A lot of times we talk about accountability, we can talk about other people's accountability or how we presume they should be accountable, but we're not looking inwardly at ourselves about what we don't bring to the table. A lot of my shortcomings were I was a horrible communicator. I was really bad at it. There was a lot of assumption, or there was a lot of you're supposed to already be something. And I think society plays such a major role in our expectations of men or our expectations of women. I think for men, masculinity plays a role. For women, I think femininity plays a role. And a lot of times what we desire from the person that we're seeking or want to be with, they're not communicated to them in the beginning of these situations that are en route to facilitate a relationship. If you have desires, wants, and needs, are you communicating that, or do you think it's just assumed that your idea of what a man is every idea of what a man is, or your idea of what a woman is every woman's idea of what a woman is? I have found that when I have these conversations, for example, with women, that not every woman sees masculinity the exact same way. They see it in regards to what it is they want, particularly for themselves, as it pertains to a man. And when it comes to most women, usually in a group setting, they will all echo they want the same thing. But when you isolate them and ask them specifically what they want from a man, those answers seem to change. The same thing goes for men. If you ask men in a group setting what they want from a woman, they typically parrot or echo the group mindset. If you isolate them and ask them particularly what they want in a woman, then that answer becomes more nuanced, it becomes more specific, and it becomes more driven to what it is that they desire. I think when you guys are out in this world and you're not receiving the outcomes you want from suitors, or whether you're looking for a man, you're looking for a woman, I think when you go into a situation, you have to go in as a blank slate, meaning if you're bringing in any baggage from a previous relationship that you have not had any closure on whatsoever, or you have learned nothing about yourself in a previous relationship and you're bringing that into a new relationship, there is a propensity or a possibility that you are going to repeat the same actions or have the same outcomes in the new relationship because you never reconciled issues with that individual or reconciled issues with yourself. For example, let me give you an example of accountability, and I've had this conversation with many people before, and I think accountability to people means blame, and they don't seem to understand that more than one thing can be true and more than one thing can be opposite depending on your subjective or biased opinion. If I was cheated on by somebody that I'm in a relationship with, as somebody that is a critical thinker, we hope that we all aspire to be critical thinkers. Yes, the cheating or being cheated on absolutely is going to hurt. It is absolutely going to be the primary focus of what has been taking place in your relationship. However, if I sit back after being cheated on and I bring myself to a position of calm and I'm sitting with my rational mindset and I'm sitting with my rational thoughts, if I think to myself, what could I have done differently in that relationship? Me asking myself that question does not mean that the act of cheating is inherently my fault. Taking inventory of my adjacent behavior to being cheated on is not indicative of me taking accountability for the act of the cheating. It's indicative of me taking responsibility going forward of mitigating some of the things that I could do differently if by taking truthful inventory I find fault. So for example, if before the cheating, consistently my significant other complained about my lack of being present in the home, or I'm always out with my friends, or I'm not giving them enough attention, or I'm not making a conscious effort in the household, or I'm not spending enough time with my children. Even though I could probably come up with excuses as to why those things may have taken place, I need to sit back and understand, is it or can it be true? And if it is true, yeah, I didn't spend enough time with her when she asked for it. I spent more time with my friends. I wasn't present in the household as much as I could have been. I prioritized certain other things over her at times or over my children at times. That is not to say that the act of cheating is my fault. That is to say that the downfall of the relationship could have been mitigated possibly if I had changed some of those behaviors, or I had a better open line of communication or whatever. Now, that does not negate the cheating whatsoever. That lets me know that, hey, this was important to that person, so much so that it altered their mindset in regards to what I believe they valued in our relationship. Now, they're definitely at fault for the act of cheating. Absolutely. Nobody's going to get a pass on that. But if I want to move on into another relationship, and I hope and aspire to be in a healthy relationship, I want to go into that relationship knowing that time is possibly important to that person. Availability is possibly important to that new person. Priority or prioritizing or managing my time is of importance to that person. Effort is important to that person. Again, two things can be true. Them cheating on me is 100% bad. Me not providing or giving of myself when there was vocal concern is also me taking accountability and inventory for things that I could have done differently without saying that I deserved to be cheated on. That is where a healthy mindset comes from. And I think it takes a lot for a person to be healthy enough to take inventory of themselves in the face of such an atrocious thing to take place. There's a tendency when somebody cheats or somebody is more at fault for us to highlight that's it, and then we put the onus solely on them, and then we take no minor inventory or significant inventory for ourselves, which could be a benefit for us going forward, whether it's to repair the relationship if you decide to stay. I don't judge people that decide to stay in their relationships and they decide to work it out. That's probably one of the most adult things ever. Or if they decide to end the relationship and move on, you want to move on knowing that you learned something, not just about the other person, but about yourself going forward. That is also of importance also. When we move in a way where we have decided that we desire to be in a relationship, oftentimes we forget that we meet people where they are at. Meeting people where they are at does not imply that they cannot change. I have been with my wife going on 11 years. Who I was in my late 20s, early 30s is not who I am now, was in my late 30s, and it's not who I am now in my 40s. My wants, desires, needs, and all those things change. But there needs to be a communication in order for those things to take place, because you got to remember, your partner also has to grow with you, and you have to grow with them. They have to make themselves available to change, just like you have to make yourself available to change. So for those of us that are in the dating world, you got to remember, you're meeting people where they're at, but you also have to understand that change is something that is worked on. Meeting a man that meets every single requirement that you desire may be far and few in between. For men, meeting a woman that checks all the boxes that you may desire may be far and few in between. You have to decide and negotiate what is important, what is not as important, and what you're willing to move on, as long as the other person is willing to move as well. When we talk about these relationship atmospheres out in the world, and when you consume social media constructs, there is a conversation about for example, 50-50 and what you bring to the table. So let me address that very quickly. And I feel like the conversation may or may not be all over the place, but it's a very nuanced conversation, and there's a lot of things that influence these things. So when you talk about 50-50, it is my belief, and it is my personal experience, that there is absolutely nothing in a relationship, especially a marriage, that is ever 50-50. Even for those that both man and woman or husband and wife or what companions work in the relationship. Somebody always makes more than the other person. Somebody's always saving more than the other person. Somebody's more active with the kids than the other person, or has access more to the kids than the other person. Somebody's more nurturing. Somebody does more of the household chores. Somebody does more of the working. Somebody does more of the home repair and improvement. This aspect that everything is split down the middle does not work. It absolutely, again, in my opinion and based on my perspective, does not work in situations, because nothing ever is as it seems in the relationship, because a relationship is always evolving. Situations are always changing, and you and your significant other are always growing. So there will never be an occasion where something is split evenly down the middle. Even when a husband makes less than a wife, or a wife makes less than a husband, but you both work, somebody is paying more of a portion of the bill than another person. Somebody is retaining or saving more money more than another person. So this idea of 50-50 equal partners, to me, is not a realistic goal that has long-term capabilities to work in the long run. What matters is that you have somebody that has your back. You have somebody that invests in you. You have somebody that can pick you up and lift you up emotionally, spiritually, and physically. You have somebody that speaks life into you. You have somebody that protects you mentally, physically, and emotionally. You have somebody that looks out for your best, y'all's, both of yours, or the households, or your children's best interest. That is what matters in a relationship. There will never be an occasion where everything is split evenly down the middle and everybody is pulling their own share. Now, in regards to what men or women bring to the table, I believe that conversation on its surface is very disingenuous. But if you're asking in a very genuine way, it all goes back to what a woman desires from a man in order for her to be successful in a relationship, and what a man desires from a woman in order to be successful in a relationship. And us, men and women, being both open-minded to the ideas. We cannot say as men that we desire a woman to be one way or exactly this way if we then make excuses why it's not okay for us to reciprocate that for them. Just like it is not okay for women to say that men need to be X, Y, and Z, but when men have standards, then they want to call them sassy. Or on the flip side, men call women with standards masculine. Everybody has standards. Everybody's an independent person before they get into a relationship. There are certain things that you should already embody when you come to a relationship before you get with a man or before you get with a woman. You should already be independent when you meet somebody, capable of taking care of yourself, capable of looking at yourself and understanding what your shortcomings are. The person that you're with should complement your shortcomings in such a way that elevates your shortcomings. Doesn't help you remain in your shortcomings, but helps you elevate and repair those shortcomings, and vice versa. And it is an ongoing relationship thing that takes place. I don't think I've ever seen anybody in a healthy relationship engage in these kinds of conversations. Typically, the people that engage in these kinds of conversations are usually single people. And that's no disrespect to single people. But what I would say to single people is, have you taken self-inventory of yourself to understand the outcomes that you are consistently met with that may not line up with what it is that you want? If you keep receiving these same outcomes, there is a possibility that you have created a trend in your mindset or a trend in your behavior that is creating a barrier to realistic relationships. I think nowadays, and I won't be ageist and say young people, I will just say people in general, I think there is a conversation that takes place that people that are dating want people to be exactly who they are when they meet them, with no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Not understanding that the relationships that they fawn over, whether celebrity relationships or relationships that they see in their own lives that they deem or aspire to get to, those relationships have not made it to that point without any heartache, strife, or struggle. These are two individuals that have worked through their differences, have worked through their issues, that have worked through understanding that their desires, wants, and needs change with age or change with situation. It is more difficult to be mature in the face of a tough situation where emotion is involved than it is to just choose emotion to run off of. That usually tends to avoid accountability, and that goes for men and women. So if I leave you with anything in this 20-minute video, is that taking inventory of yourself and taking inventory of past situations, past loves, past heartache, your negative actions, their negative actions, and moving in such a way that mitigates that, moves in a way that helps you understand more of yourself as opposed to more of the other person, or understanding the needs of others will more than likely help you facilitate what healthy looks like. I remember one of my bosses a long time ago talked to us about striving for success. But then he came back in another meeting and said, hey, it just dawned on me, I never told you guys what success looked like to me. And that is such a big statement. What does success or a healthy relationship or a healthy you look like? What does that look like to other people? And are you communicating that? And are you moving and holding yourself accountable and others accountable in a healthy, positive, communicative way that gets you guys to a position of fruitful love, fruitful passion, elevation, growth, and just overall just being a joy to one another and being impactful in each other's lives in a positive way. So again, I'm Carl, Selflessly Selfish Podcast, one take episode. Hopefully it wasn't too all over the place, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.